There were many things which went on yesterday, including Farage in a boat and a groundbreaking agreement between Starmer and Macron. And what is dominating the media today is Farage's furious response, Kemi Badenoch's Rwanda revival pledge, and the deepening fracture within the Conservative Party as figures defect from Reform UK and try to draw attention away from this remarkable agreement between Starmer and Macron. Starmer has just agreed in principle to what's been labelled a one-in, one-out return scheme with France. The aim is deceptively simple. For every migrant returned to France after crossing the Channel by small boat, the UK will take an asylum seeker via a safe route from France. It is, however, only a pilot, and reports suggest that the practical impact may be modest, as few as 50 people per week. Far from heralding a grand fix, it's more of a diplomatic experiment to re-establish a legal framework lost with Brexit, and Macron was characteristically blunt. He blamed Brexit for the entire small boats crisis, pointing out that Britain lost the EU's Dublin system for returning asylum seekers. This is about Lord Frost's stupidity in negotiating Brexit. And Macron's words were designed to sting, and they should. The problems become Brexit with your government, the precise opposite of what Brexit had promised. And Starmer, meanwhile, refused to play the blame game, presenting the deal as a triumph of quiet, pragmatic diplomacy of what he calls megaphone politics. Farage responded with predictable ferocity. He called the deal a humiliation for Brexit Britain, accusing Starmer of acting like an EU member by bowing to Macron's demands. Farage went so far as to claim Macron would return to Paris laughing at British weakness. In Farage's telling, Brexit was meant to mean control, but he sees Starmer's approach as surrender. He wants drastic action, internment camps and disused bases, mass deportations even to war-torn states, and if necessary deploying the Royal Marines to tow migrant boats back to France. It's more than rhetorical. Reform UK is preparing to publish a policy blueprint for large-scale deportations, proposing to override the European Convention on Human Rights by declaring a national emergency. And Farage knows these plans are incendiary, but they speak to the anger of those who think the Conservative and Labour parties have both failed on migration. The Conservatives, for their part, are seeking to recapture their own lost credibility on immigration by promising to revive Rwanda, the Rwanda deportation scheme. This Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp says Starmer's plan will only return 1 in 17 small boat arrivals, calling it an invitation to smugglers. The Tory message is that their Rwanda plan would remove 100% of illegal arrivals immediately. But let's be honest, the original Rwanda scheme was mired in legal challenges and never actually got off the ground, despite endless Home Office attempts to sidestep the European Convention on Human Rights. Yet Badenoch's team believes that doubling down on Rwanda will prove their determination to deliver the Brexit promise of border control and draw a stark dividing line with Starmer's so-called gimmick. Meanwhile, on the northern French coast, the human reality is both desperate and relentless. Camps near Calais and Dunkirk remain squalid. Thousands of migrants, many from war zones, await a chance to cross. Aid workers describe French police slashing dinghies, using tear gas, confiscating possessions in a game of cat and mouse that does little to deter crossings. In many cases, migrants make the trip again and again despite the danger. The scale of human misery and determination on those beaches makes clear why no simple deterrent can truly stop the crossings. As long as there is desperation, there will be a demand for smugglers. I know from my own experience and from talking to people who have from migrants, I know one particular person who attempted to leave his country 18 times. And now the Conservative Party faces an existential threat from the right. Former senior Tories are defecting to Reform UK, including David Jones, a former and uninspiring cabinet minister. Jake Berry, again uninspiring, once the Tory chair during Liz Truss's regime. Berry's move is particularly telling. A one-time champion of Boris Johnson, then the enthusiast for Liz Truss, Berry's decision to jump ship suggests he no longer sees the Conservatives as a credible path back to Parliament. It's not just about personality, but structure. Each defection brings organisational knowledge to reform. campaigning expertise, donor networks, local roots, and if more follow, it will strengthen Reform's challenge to the Conservatives at the grassroots level. This puts Kemi Badenoch in a bind. She has to promise her restive party that they can find their way back to power, even as former MPs see Reform UK as the better bet for relevance. But Reform has its own paradox. Farage wants it to be an insurgent party railing against 14 years of Tory failure, especially on migration, yet it risks looking like a retirement home for disaffected ex-Tory MPs. Already you hear worries about it becoming Tory 2.0. Even the husband of Suella Braverman, himself a Reform supporter, warned against this trend on social media. If Reform becomes stuffed with former Conservative ministers, it may lose the anti-establishment credibility that it made so attractive. So where does this leave us? Britain is still grappling with the consequences of Brexit, stripped of EU migration agreements, unable to manage channel crossings alone. Starmer's deal with Macron is a tentative, limited attempt to restore cooperation. The Tories cry betrayal, vow Rwanda flights, and struggle to hold together as Reform siphons away their base. Farage, meanwhile, is perfectly positioned to exploit every failure with the populist promise of uncompromising action, regardless of feasibility or legality. It's a grimly familiar pattern in British politics. Rhetoric, promises, moral grandstanding, but little evidence of a humane or effective solution to the migration crisis that reflects the complex human reality on France's beaches.